we stand now on Springer's Point, you can see behind me where one of North Carolina's most famous pirates met his demise. Behind me is Teach's whole channel, which was named for William Teach, better known as the villainous pirate Blackbeard. Blackbeard cultivated his feared and storied personality with his wild beard and his cannon fuses burning on the ends of his hat, pistol slung across his chest. There's even reports from his crew that he communed with the devil himself. This is all a brilliant and well-orchestrated psychological warfare by William Teach, and his reputation allowed him to take many ships with relatively little violence. Little is known about William Teach's early life before he was a privateer for the British during Queen Anne's War in Jamaica, but scholarly research indicates that he was born in Britain. When Queen Anne's War ended in 1713, many British privateers, to include William Teach, were without work, and he began to pirate under the mentorship of Benjamin Hornigold. In October of 1717, they were reported to have been spotted together north of here off the Delaware Capes. The next known sighting of them was on November 28, 1717, when they had returned to the Caribbean and commandeered a French slave ship, the La Concorde, which would become Blackbeard's flagship. The La Concorde had deported Nantes, France, on March 24, 1717, bound for the port of Judah on the west coast of Africa. After spending July to October 1717 in the port of Judah, the La Concorde set sail from Martinique with a crew of about 75 French sailors and 516 African slaves. When it was intercepted by Blackbeard, so many of the crew were dead or sick, there was only 21 left to defend against Blackbeard's 2 ships, 20 cannons, and 150 men. Other than the ship, 20 pounds of gold dust, the 10 men that Blackbeard forced to go with him, and the 6 that voluntarily joined his crew, he graciously let the rest of the La Concorde's crew continue on to Martinique in one of his sloops with the rest of their slaves. The captain of the La Concorde renamed the sloop the Mauve Rencontre, or Bad Encounter. After Blackbeard took the Queen Anne's Revenge, after Blackbeard took the La Concorde, Benjamin Hornigold retired, and Blackbeard renamed the La Concorde the Queen Anne's Revenge. He then voyaged around the Caribbean and robbed ships from November of 1717 to about June of 1718. In June of 1718, he made his way north and besieged the city of Charleston, South Carolina. And he demanded a chest of medicine. That was his only demand. And once again, he spared his hostages. They eventually acquiesced and gave him his chest of medicine, and he sent the hostages he had taken in the siege back onto shore, a bit mostly naked without their clothes, but still spared their lives, which would be uncharacteristic for the Blackbeard that we've heard stories of. After he received the medicine, he sailed north towards North Carolina. And he tried to pass through what was then called Topsail Inlet, now it's called Beaufort Inlet, and ran the Queen Anne's Revenge aground. And one of his sloops came back to try to help and also ran aground. With the loss of his flagship, he marooned some of his men and continued on with 2 other sloops, one of them called the Adventure, towards Bath, North Carolina. There are multiple theories about what happened when he ran the Queen Anne's Revenge aground. One of them came from the crew who were marooned, who believed that he did it intentionally to try to split the crew in 2 so that he didn't have to share as much of a cut of the treasure that they had gotten with the crew. The other more modern theory is that despite his maritime prowess, there's no record of him ever having been to Topsail Inlet. So it's a very difficult inlet to navigate. So he may have just made a mistake and capitalized on it, and without his flagship, only took part of his crew with him. But what we do know for certain is that the Queen Anne's Revenge sunk in Topsail Inlet. In 1996, a shipwreck was found there, and is presumed to be the Queen Anne's Revenge. It was found near Beaufort Inlet. There's also a historical record in the form of a report to the British Board of Admiralty by Captain Ellis Brand of the HMS Line. He wrote, on June 10 or thereabouts, a large pirate ship of 40 guns with 3 sloops in her company came upon the coast of North Carolina, where they endeavored to go into a harbor called Topsail Inlet. The ship struck upon the bar at the entrance of the harbor and is lost, as is one of the sloops. Blackbeard headed for Bath, North Carolina, which at the time was the seat of the colonial government and the home to colonial governor Charles Eden. In Bath, his intent was to capitalize on King George's offer of pardon to any pirate that give up their pirating ways by meeting with Governor Eden. And in Bath, he settled down into domestic life. It's reported that he married a young woman in Bath, and the ceremony was officiated by Governor Eden. But he became restless, and he traveled often between Bath and Ocracoke Island, where we're at now. This was his favorite place to come. And he harassed ships that were in the area, some trading ships that stole goods. There was even an instance when he claimed to have found a French sugar ship, and he brought it back to Bath. And the local ship captains that he'd been harassing and some of the local planners complained to Governor Eden. The only problem is Governor Eden had taken a cut of the sugar from the French sugar ship. It's reported that it was 60 hogshead, which is roughly 3,750 gallons of sugar. So Governor Eden, he held a council and looked into it. Of course, the council found that the ship was abandoned, and Blackbeard's salvage of it was completely legal. So, not finding any reprieve with Governor Eden, the captains and planters went to Governor Spotswood of Virginia, who is known to be an anti-pirate governor, and they asked him for help. Well, of course, Governor Spotswood, being the anti-pirate governor that he was, immediately dispatched a Royal Navy Lieutenant Robert Maynard to deal with Blackbeard. So Robert Maynard set off from Jamestown, Virginia, and in November of 1718, he encountered Blackbeard here behind me in Teach's Hole in the channel here, and they had their one and only battle. Now, Blackbeard had Maynard outgunned. Maynard's sloop didn't even have any deck guns on it, but Maynard had Blackbeard's sloop outmanned. So when Blackbeard came about, he fired some nails and scrap iron out of his deck guns at Lieutenant Maynard's sloop. Maynard had his men hide below deck, and Blackbeard, believing that the men were dead, that they were killed by the original volley from the deck guns, had his men board Lieutenant Maynard's sloop. So at that time, Lieutenant Maynard had his men come from below deck, and there was a battle between the pirates and the Royal Navy sailors on the deck of Lieutenant Maynard's boat. And it ended with Lieutenant Maynard beheading Blackbeard. And it's reported that Blackbeard's dead body had 5 gunshots and 20 sword wounds to it when he was killed. So that was the end. Most of Blackbeard's crew was killed. One of his next in command, Israel Hands, was taken prisoner and was deposed later on, which is where we got some of the details of the battle from, along with Lieutenant Maynard's report. Lieutenant Maynard seized a lot of the goods that Blackbeard had, and he hung Blackbeard's severed head on the bow of his sloop and headed back to Virginia to report back to Governor Spotswood that he had been successful in his pursuit of Blackbeard. So this location here, as you can tell, is storied with Blackbeard. It was one of his favorite beaches. There's stories of him having parties here with other pirates, and he liked to come here a lot. And just right behind me here is where he ultimately met his demise.